Well, it looks like Todd Monken is just not going anywhere. Big Todd Monken and Baltimore Ravens news is revealed. We react to it live here on Locked On Ravens, as well as how it can benefit Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher, Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here on this Monday afternoon, a little afternoon reaction, making Locked On Ravens both a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. Free and available for you, as always, on all podcasting platforms. Video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel. Also in audio form, where you can follow along and subscribe over there as well. Bring you 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. So news like this, we react to every single piece of Ravens big news. We also talk about when the games happen. We go live after every game, although those game reaction streams aren't going to happen for a while, unfortunately, but I'm looking forward to getting back into those as well. We do have regularly scheduled content Monday through Friday, even in the offseason. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens, this afternoon's episode, is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Really wasn't anticipating doing this, but that's really how all these instant reaction shows go when it comes to news. The Ravens and Todd Monken, according to Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, are finalizing an extension. It is pretty massive news when you think about it. And honestly, it's massive news from a bunch of different angles, not just Todd Monken is staying in Baltimore, but I think it maybe has implications for John Harbaugh. I also think that Lamar Jackson benefits a huge amount from this. So look, I want to hear, this is a live show, first of all. Love to hear where people are tuning in from the live shows. So if you're in video form watching live, be sure to put that in the comments. If you're watching after the fact, be sure to comment that as well. And if you're listening in audio form, be sure to hit me up on social media. I love the interaction, and it really means a lot. I also see a lot of birthday wishes in the chat from everybody. And for those that don't know, it was my birthday yesterday. I thank you for the wishes. I would have hoped that we could have seen a Ravens win in the AFC Championship game and go on to the Super Bowl, but unfortunately, that's not how it works. And the Ravens were eliminated last week. But again, I really do appreciate it. Thank you for the birthday wishes. So we are going to. Oh, and look at this, David. David says his birthday was yesterday too. All right, David. Well, happy belated birthday to you as well. It's a good day to have a birthday, January 26th. But let's dive into the Todd Monken news. Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, again, reporting the Ravens are finalizing an extension with Todd Monken. Pretty big news for Baltimore. Obviously, Fowler noting that Baltimore led the NFL on offense. Lamar Jackson's coming off his best statistical season this year, and Todd Monken has had head coaching interest. Monken has had head coaching interest for the past 2 seasons. And it just feels like whenever the Ravens and their coaches are mentioned in these head coaching opportunities, or even coordinator opportunities for assistants, they always lose a lot of head coaches. They always, coordinators for coaches or assistants for coordinators. Man, it feels like the Ravens this year really aren't going to lose that many coaches. I know they moved on from their inside linebacker coach, but really feels like this is a true run it back season for the Baltimore Ravens. Monken earned this, first of all. Definitely earned it. Comes in from Georgia after winning some national championships. And look, he's somebody that, in my opinion, he has helped this offense grow. I know that under Greg Roman, when he was the offensive coordinator, there were a lot of questions and issues about, well, just how much is Lamar growing? How much is this offense growing? And Todd Monken comes in his first season, so we'll start with 2023. This was the 3rd best rushing offense in the league in terms of yards per attempt, 4.9, and the 5th best passing offense in terms of yards per attempt was 6.8. Lamar won his 2nd MVP with Todd Monken, and that offense in general was really good and really efficient. They were top 10 in 3rd down percentage, 4th down percentage, red zone percentage. And then you moved to 2024, and I thought the offense honestly improved. We saw a historic season. They were the best passing offense in the league and the best rushing offense in the league. Lamar, again, as Jeremy Fowler mentioned, their best statistical season. Lamar's on track to win his second straight MVP here, third of his career. And then you also see, all right, well, then they become the best red zone offense in the NFL. Now they're the third best third down offense in the NFL. If you've been with me on Locked On Ravens, if you've been listening to me, I love the growth. I'm a big proponent of growth, playoff growth, player growth, coach growth, whatever it may be, stats growth. We saw that from Todd Monken. And look, it's no question that Todd Monken, in my opinion, would be a great NFL head coach. Every coach has flaws. I know that some people aren't happy with this, but I personally am very happy with this because here's the thing, and we'll get into how it benefits Lamar and John Harbaugh in the second part of the show because I think that's a very underrated aspect of this. But let's just start off with the organization, and this kind of does trickle down to Lamar. This, to me, is continuity. It is honestly very rare in today's NFL game in the way the league has gone, especially with, look, Monken is not a young offensive mind. He obviously is an older one, but that's what teams crave nowadays. It is those older, well, I guess, doesn't really matter if you're young or old, but teams do generally go on the younger side. Younger offensive mind that can help develop a quarterback, that have experience, whether it be in a certain system and have a couple of years of good assistant experience. You look at Todd Monken's resume up and down the board. I mean, how has this man not become a head coach? Obviously, success in Tampa Bay and Cleveland. He got a raw deal in Cleveland because that was the Freddie Kitchens year. And for those that don't know about the Freddie Kitchens year, that was an all-out disaster. And then in Tampa Bay, he was able to orchestrate some of the best out of Mike Evans and those guys over there as well. And then he goes to Georgia, wins national championships. He comes to Baltimore and has had multiple successful seasons. This to me is a guy, I know a lot of people, and I saw the comparison this morning. I can't remember where it was from, so I apologize. It might have been the Baltimore Banner, but it was okay. Well, Steve Spagnuolo, right? He's a guy that has had all the success in Kansas City, and he's been looked at for head coaching opportunities, but really hasn't gotten it. Could Todd Monken be that guy? And is this an age factor? Right. And I agree with Willie. Yes, Todd Monken, in my opinion, will be a head coach one day. Look, it's not a guarantee or anything, but it's just you look at that resume and it's just so impressive. And the fact that Baltimore now gets to keep him, I know there were some concerns that he was going to go and the Ravens would lose McDonald last year and then Monken this season. And that can just mess up things continuity wise. And that's a really big thing. But, as Tyler says here, and we'll talk about the Harbaugh stuff in the second part of the show, Todd being head coach, T. Martin offensive coordinator. We'll see what happens with Harbaugh this season. And depending on what happens, I think that is going to have a very big effect on his future with the team. We talked about on this morning show if you haven't caught it. But, man, this is a great development because not only does it secure Monken, it also gives the Ravens peace of mind that he is not going anywhere. And as those head coaching opportunities started to fill up, there were always going to be questions about, okay, is Monken going to be in the cycle this year? Is he going to be one of the guys that gets one of those jobs? And obviously this was a year where a lot of retread coaches got jobs like Mike Vrabel and Pete Carroll. You see Ben Johnson finally go somewhere. And then you see some weird decisions like the Cowboys and Brian Schottenheimer. It just never felt like the cards lined up for Todd Monken. It was a weird situation in Jacksonville. I feel like next season there will be a lot better opportunities for Todd Monken to be a head coach if he wants them, and maybe one of those opportunities will be in Baltimore. I don't know. I know there's a lot of conversation about that as well. So, look, the overall response to Todd Monken, and I put this out on social media, I wanted to get a pulse of how everybody was feeling about it in Baltimore. A lot of people very happy about this. And look, this is the thing, and this is a comment I got from Lou, led the best offense in the league this year. Lamar had back-to-back MVPs with him at the helm. Hard not to be excited about it. The consistency factor of a play caller that knows their quarterback is greatly overlooked. And this is the big thing for me. When Todd Monken first came to Baltimore, the big thing with Greg Roman was that Lamar didn't have freedom in that offense. He didn't get the proper necessary freedom to learn and to grow as a quarterback to the level that the Ravens needed him to. It always felt like there was a wall that Lamar Jackson was hitting, and it wasn't his fault. And then Todd Monken comes in, and he, John Harbaugh, and Lamar Jackson establish a plan of, hey, we're giving the keys to you, Lamar. You're going to go out here. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. You're going to run this. And we've seen Lamar have so much success with that, checking out of plays, reading the defense, all stuff he didn't have. That is what having belief in your quarterback looks like. And this is the benefit of having a coordinator that believes in their quarterback, because it just felt like Lamar and Greg Roman never had that connection. There were weird shots being taken, and it just never felt like they had that genuine connection. This thing with Lamar and Todd Monken, it feels absolutely genuine to me. And that is what I absolutely love about this, and that he is staying in Baltimore, at least for another season, and hopefully, in my opinion, for a lot of seasons after this. But coming up, we'll continue the Lamar conversation and the John Harbaugh conversation because it benefits both guys greatly and could actually indicate what happens with John Harbaugh this offseason. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty to talk about on this instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by LinkedIn. And as a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. Post your job. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high-quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Back here, Locked On Ravens Instant Reaction live on Monday afternoon. Kevin Oestreicher here talking with you. The Ravens and Todd Monken finalizing an extension. He stays in Baltimore, which was a big concern for some people. There were a lot of worry about whether Monken could stay or go. And of course, I think it is warranted. I think it's a good thing to react to over here on Locked On Ravens. So appreciate everybody for checking in, tuning in, and be sure to tell me how you feel about the Todd Monken situation. How happy are you that Monken is back? Is this so? Scale of 1 to 10. Let's do that. If you're in the live chat, put it in. 1 being you're not excited, 10 being you are extremely excited. 1 to 10. How happy are you that Todd Monken is back with the Ravens and finalizing an extension? I'm putting this at like a 8 or a 9. 8 or a 9 for me. I know that Monken has flaws, and look, everybody does. I know that, we had conversations about some of his play calls in the AFC Championship game, but that to me is that doesn't really mean that, oh, okay, all of a sudden we're hating on Todd Monken. I'm not hating on Todd Monken. Monken is somebody that brings experience. I think he brings a steadying presence, and we saw, I think the thing that truly won him over, not that he wasn't won over already, that he didn't win over the fan base already here, but the thing that won him over, in my opinion, was when he was getting passionate with the receivers and showing them how to punch the ball out, running across the field and doing that drill, right? That to me is it. And so I see, we got 8. I see 10. What is that? 10 million? I can't read the desk. Yeah, I think that's 10 million over there from Benjamin. So look, that is what it is. And I see Laura saying Monken has flaws, and that's why he gets an 8. I get it. There are some things that you'd like to see cleaned up with. Look, I've been on record saying that I am not to the level with Todd Monken that I hoped I would be at through 2 seasons, but that doesn't mean he's not a good coordinator and hasn't helped this Ravens team. I think that when Todd Monken's flaws come out, they come out very loudly. I think that's what happens. But when he has control of this offense, he's one of the best in the business, and that's the big thing to me. But as I mentioned, this also does benefit John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson. Talked about Lamar in the first part of the show a little more than John, so we'll get into that first. I remember, Joe Flacco. Remember the Joe Flacco days in Baltimore? I certainly do. Right? I certainly do. Growing up and watching Joe play. Joe had a lot of different offensive coordinators throughout the years. And I think that did hinder his ability a little bit, where guys were getting fired, guys were moving on. I still will wonder what would have happened if Gary Kubiak stayed with the Ravens. That was my favorite Ravens year outside of the Super Bowl year, obviously 2014. That year haunts me. They should have won the Super Bowl that season. They should have won it for Steve Smith. But regardless, with Joe, there were a lot of different offensive coordinators, a lot of different minds coming in, a lot of different opinions coming in, a lot of different ways to run an offense coming in, a lot of different systems coming in. It can throw you off. It can. And so when I'm not counting Lamar's rookie year as year 1, because obviously it was only the second half of the season and it really wasn't meant to be his year anyway, but he had Marty Mornhinweg for that year. And then they move on from Mornhinweg and they promote Greg Roman. The continuity of Roman was great. That aspect of it was fine. Did it last a little too long? Yeah, I think we can all agree that Greg Roman probably overstayed his welcome with the Ravens. But in this league, you're getting offensive coordinators fired after 1 year, fired after 2 years. There's that just lack of continuity with quarterbacks. And Lamar's to a point now where it doesn't matter as much anymore because he is a veteran. And with Flacco, as he got older, it didn't matter as much anymore either. But that's why for Monken coming back, you don't want to just lose good coaches, right? Everybody has their flaws. You don't just want to lose good coaches for nothing here. And the Ravens, I agree. T. Martin probably would have been their choice if Monken were to go. But for Lamar, he has established that connection, as we talked about in the first part of the show. And I do believe that with that, they are able to continue to build and to grow on this. You don't want to kind of start over, not from square one necessarily, because obviously there are things you would take away, but you don't want to start over there with a new coach. Got to learn each other's abilities out. You got to learn how the coach has to learn how Lamar operates and Lamar has to learn how the new coach operates. This is just kind of, you can do smooth sailing ahead and you can say, okay, you know me, I know you. Let's go do this thing again. And with the way, this would be a different conversation if the offense took a step back last season, or, there wasn't enough growth last year, or the Ravens had missed the playoffs largely due to the offense. But that is not the case, right? That's not the case. Monken, I think, did a great job this season. Overall, there were some issues, most definitely, but I think he did a good job overall. And that, to me, is why he's being rewarded with an extension, because Monken knows that he is probably going to be a hot commodity next year. And this, to me, doesn't necessarily change that, right? I think that at the end of the day, until we know the specifics of what it is and the length, and we might not ever know that, I'm not sure. It hasn't been, the time of this recording, it hasn't been put out there in terms of what the actual length of this extension is. But regardless, now the Ravens have a lot of work to do with the roster. Because again, as we talked about, the coaching staff probably not getting touched, but this is the first offseason, it feels like, in a couple of years where the Ravens actually will have continuity and they can kind of just build up and not have to tear down, whether it be from a roster perspective or from a coaching perspective, and rebuild that back up. You can keep your foundation. And look, if that foundation is a divisional round, that's not wonderful, but you can build that up to hopefully Super Bowl with a couple of additions and the continuity that you get from bringing back Todd Monken. Now, how does it benefit John Harbaugh? I think, and we talked about this on today's show, this is a different approach the Ravens have used, because they don't love lame duck head coaches. And again, for those that don't know what a lame duck head coach is, that is a coach in the last year of his contract that does not have an extension in place. So meaning that that guy would be a free agent after their contract is up. Does this mean a John Harbaugh extension is coming? I don't know. I've seen that floated out from certain people about, well, now that Monken is extended, does this mean that Todd Monken is going to be, or excuse me, John Harbaugh is going to be the next guy that ends up being extended? I mean, I could see it. If that does happen, I don't feel like that has too much bearing on the conversations we've had about John Harbaugh early, which is this is a make or break year, and there's no exception about that, and it absolutely should be. But I do think that this news benefits Harbaugh, because usually when a new coach would, let's just say, and this is just a hypothetical, but let's just say that the Ravens lose in the wild card next year and Harbaugh gets fired and they have Monken under contract, this, that, and the other. If they promote Monken to head coach, if they say, hey, this is your show, Todd, you're running it, then you can move T. Martin to offensive coordinator. You can work around that coaching staff and not a lot has to change. But if it's a new coach from outside the organization, who's to say that he wants Todd Monken as the offensive coordinator? Who's to say that he wants Zach Orr as a defensive coordinator, right? So it does depend, because if the Ravens want to keep this in-house, and they certainly could, and Todd Monken gets promoted, if Harbaugh leaves or gets fired, then yeah, then you kind of can just run it back and do your thing. But if they bring in somebody else, I'm not sure Monken stays along. So this could just be, yes, Monken stays, and if Harbaugh stays, then Monken's in Baltimore for a while, and yippee, right? That could be it. But it just depends, because if the Ravens do have another wild card exit, Lamar's going to be 29 at the end of next season. He's going to turn 29 before the Super Bowl ends. That's a year away from 30. It's crazy. First of all, it's unreal. Lamar is already this old, and he's not even old, but like, it's crazy. He's already been in the league for this long, but it's just like, is Harbaugh the right guy to maximize the window? And I've been on here saying that I believe John Harbaugh is a good coach. And if he were to land somewhere and get fired, then he would land somewhere. And I think he'd land pretty softly, but sometimes it is just time. and they're obviously keeping him this year. But to me, the big conversation now becomes, is he signed to an extension? And there are going to be a lot of teams that have that conversation after next year, by the way, right? There are going to be a lot of teams that have that conversation. If there's a disappointing year from John Harbaugh next year, what happens there? A disappointing year from Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh, what happens there? Maybe a disappointing year from Sean McDermott. Doesn't feel like he's getting fired after the AFC Championship game. What happens if they have a disappointing year there in Buffalo? They're going to be, and look, if all three of those openings happen, those are A-plus openings. There weren't a lot of great openings this year, in my opinion. I mean, Chicago, if you believe in Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson, that's fine. There are a couple of other good ones, whatnot, but there could be multiple different openings that happen next offseason that Todd Monken could say, oh, well, this is a different situation here, because again, it's not just the team has to want the coach also has to want the team. So that's a big conversation, but everybody has to contribute and perform next season, from the coaches to the players, everybody. Eric DeCosta and the staff building the team out. It's a joint effort. You win as a team, you lose as a team. And for Todd Monken, the things that I would like to see improved from him, I'd say more consistent play calling. One of the big things that has been kind of my pet peeve over the past couple of years with Monken has been the offense either starts out super fast and then fizzles out, or starts off super slow and then comes to life. That's not how it should be. And then the other part of it is some of the questionable play calling decisions. Look, everybody has those. Everybody has them. I'm not sitting here saying Todd Monken is the only coach that has questionable decisions play calling, but sometimes it can rear its ugly head in the worst of times. And I think that's the big conversation for a lot of people with Todd Monken. But overall, very excited about Todd Monken staying in Baltimore. I think it benefits Lamar. I think it honestly might benefit Harbaugh in a way as well, as we talked about. And coming up, we're going to talk about where the Ravens go from here. Now that Monken is extended, now that they're finalizing that deal, what are the next steps for this Ravens team? We'll talk about that and a lot more coming up on this Instant Reaction Live edition of Locked On Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. There's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from the kickoff to the final whistle. Live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher rounding out this live edition of the show. Todd Monken staying in Baltimore. He's finalizing an extension according to Jeremy Fowler. This is a big move for Baltimore, and I think it kind of sets up the rest of the Ravens offseason. Obviously, as we've talked about here on this show before, the Ravens are going to be able to build, not tear down and rebuild. They're going to be able to build. And the big part for me with that is you're not losing a ton of free agents either. Even if everybody on the Ravens free agent list left this offseason, that's Ronnie Stanley, Brandon Stevens, Patrick Ricard, Patrick McCary, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not counting Darius, by the way. He's a restricted free agent. He's going to be back with the Ravens, barring something crazy. To me, I think that now you have an opportunity. Because remember, last year it was, okay, well, Patrick Queen is gone, and Geno Stone is gone, and Jadeveon Clowney is gone, and everybody's leaving. They don't have that this year. So when you look at needs for this team, they can add, and I think if they can add, what's the number I'll use? I'll use 3 to 4 high-quality impact players. 3 to 4. And that doesn't include them bringing back, because I believe they will bring back a couple of guys on for their free agent list, obviously. 3 to 4 big outside additions, whether it be through free agency, trade, or the draft. This will help propel the Ravens to at least the AFC Championship game. At least. Now, obviously, Super Bowl is the goal, right? Even AFC Championship game is not good enough. But again, it's about growth. Now, the needs that this team has, you can certainly make an argument for wide receiver. I think not in terms of like a star. They have Zay and Rashod Bateman, but a third guy to complement those players, I would certainly think is in the cards for Baltimore this offseason. Offensive line is going to be a big one too. I wouldn't stay content with what they have. Plus, Ronnie Stanley might be gone, so you have to wonder there. And then the 2 guard positions, McCary, if he's not back, is that Andrew Voorhees' job? Do you bring in somebody else? Is Daniel Falele your long-term guard? We'll see there. On the defensive side of the ball, I think just guys in the trenches, defensive line, edge rusher in particular. It's nothing against Calvin Noy and Afe Owe, but those two haven't proved to be game wreckers. And it's very hard to find that, by the way. Not a lot of teams have that. It's obviously a luxury if you're able to go in and find a guy like that. But pass rusher still, to me, is a need. And even if it's just adding another complementary piece to that, I personally will go a bit above and beyond that, whether it's in the first round trying to draft a guy or maybe a guy falls, or if there's a Khalil Mack, for example, that you can make an argument for. It just feels like outside of Van Noy and Owe, they don't have a lot of juice there. I think Tavius Robinson took a lot of strides this year as a run defender, and I think that that's going to be his bread and butter next season, and we're going to see a lot of Tavius next year. But they need that game breaker type of guy. And whether they have that, it remains to be seen. But we're going to find out. We're going to find out if they can get that, because, again, I just don't think you can go into next season trusting David Ojabo to take that next step, or Adisa Isaac to take that next step. It's nothing against either of those guys. And again, we haven't seen a ton of Isaac, and I think there's a lot of potential there. But Ojabo, I mean, we're going into year 4 here, and it's going to be really rough to say, oh, hey, now let's just go and trust a guy who's been injured for 2 seasons and has not really shown a lot in the healthy year he had. So it's a tough draw for Ojabo with him being out for so long, but you can't do it, especially on a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. You probably need another inside linebacker at this point. Trenton Simpson didn't cut it last year, and maybe he can improve with another offseason, but I wouldn't take that risk. I'd try to bring in a veteran that's a little better than Malik Harrison and Chris Board, right? I would definitely try to do that. I think Roquan had a lot on his plate this season. He didn't play particularly well to his standards, but again, it was kind of a weird year for Roquan in that middle linebacker group. And then obviously corner is the big one. And I see the comment here, yep, corner is the most important. I think replacing Brandon Stevens with a more competent corner there. And look, I'm not saying that Brandon is just a horrible, terrible player, because he's not. We've seen who Brandon Stevens can become, but you can't take that risk that he's going to go back to who he was and reward him with an extension. I think Brandon will get a contract somewhere, but in terms of what the Ravens like to do with their 3 outside corners plus a guy in the slot, you need to have an upgrade there, in my opinion. Plus even maybe some more depth, right? Maybe even some more depth would be nice. They have PJ Tampa, who I think will be a nice piece in his second season, but I think you could maybe upgrade a Jalen Armour-Davis, for example. Right? I think that could maybe be a way that you could upgrade the corner position. Then obviously safety. Safety is a big place as well. I think, to me, with Marcus Williams being gone, and I'd honestly say with the way that the safety position went last year, you're okay if you keep Ardarius and Kyle and you can do that thing, right? 100%. But I think at the end of the day, the Ravens, it's safety. They like to run those safety rotations too. They like to be able to move Kyle Hamilton around. And I think while he, again, is good in the back end, and they obviously found something there, adding another depth safety is not a bad idea. I think in the draft, they might look to do that. I think that could be where they go. Maybe a vet. But we saw how the vet route has gone for Baltimore last couple of times, and it has not been a very good thing. So I think, look, offensive line is my top priority. I think cornerback is a big one. Safety is a big one. Wide receiver as well. There are a lot of positions on this roster that could stand to use an upgrade. But it's just going to be a matter of, the Ravens have a lot of picks. They have a projected 11 picks coming in this season. This has to be the year, in my opinion, that you trade up and you go get somebody. Because at this point, what are you waiting for? I mean, the Ravens got, in my opinion, very, very lucky with Kyle Hamilton. I was sitting there watching Hamilton fall. Hamilton was supposed to go top 5. And he was falling and falling and falling. And I'm sitting there and I'm saying, please trade up. You have to trade up. He's not going to fall. And they got very lucky that he did. They got very lucky that he fell. It doesn't work that way all the time. There was a guy, Christian Gonzalez, who's on the Patriots now. He fell a lot, and the Ravens were fine. That draft was a Flowers, and that worked out. You could make an argument that they could trade up every single season. But even as the conversation of, yes, rookies and draft picks are important. Those rookie deals are really important when it comes to having a quarterback on the deal that Lamar Jackson has. But at the end of the day, do we think 11 rookies are going to be on this roster next year? Do we think they're going to have space for 11 rookies, especially with the low amount of turnover they're going to have? They'd either have to get rid of a bunch of second or third year guys to kind of accommodate those rookies on the roster, or they're going to have to trade away some of those draft picks and consolidate. And I think that this is the perfect time to do that, because you're trying to win. You're trying to go all in. You can get that high impact Nate Wiggins type player. They have the 27th pick this season. So you're 3 spots up from where you were last year. If you can do that and move, if there's a guy at 18, 19, and you can move up from 27 to the mid or late teens to get a star that's falling and nobody knows why, the Ravens, in my opinion, should absolutely capitalize on that. They absolutely should. I think it is the right thing to do, because if you can have one or two high impact free agents, and that doesn't necessarily mean big contract guys, but high impact guys. And then you also can add a Wiggins and a Rosengarten this year. That's 4 impact players. On top of it, you're maybe losing 2 or 3 impact players. And then obviously they're going to round out their depth, and you can have medium impact that comes into. There is a path for Baltimore next season. There absolutely is. As long as they have Lamar, they're absolutely, they always have a shot with Lamar, right? But this is the step. This is a huge offseason, because after this year, and I know there's a conversation about Mark Andrews and his cap hit, I believe a restructure is the best course of action there. After this year, you have to make a decision about Mark Andrews, and then Marlon Humphrey comes into the equation, and then you got to extend Kyle Hamilton and Tyler Underbaum, and then you got to extend Zay Flowers, and then down the line it's extending Rosengarten and Wiggins, and you got to come up with a new contract for Lamar. This feels like the year where you can just say, all right, we're going to run it back. It's the last dance with John Harbaugh if it comes down to it. Let's see what it looks like. Feels like that's the way the Ravens are going, and we will see how it all unfolds. But that's all I have for you here today on this live edition of Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. Todd Monken extended, finalizing that deal according to Jeremy Fowler, and it adds much-needed continuity to this Ravens team. Of course, we'll be back here tomorrow talking more Ravens football, so be sure to hit that like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form for more Ravens content. So be sure to stay tuned. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.